All right, so our pre-lesson task for today, very simple. The questions were, what is your least favorite part of writing a composition? That was the first question. Second question was, what do you think is the most difficult thing about writing a compo? Right, so before I look at the answers that were given, my least favorite part of writing a compo is probably planning. I know as a teacher, I always tell kids to plan essays. But as a writer myself, when I was writing the compos, yeah, I was like, kind of like, do I really need to plan? But guys, when I didn't plan my essays, what I usually ended up doing was that I would write half a paragraph, starting paragraph, crumple it up, start again, write another half, crumple it up, start again. Okay, so it always took me a little bit longer to get started. It would take me a few false starts. All right, I would write a little bit and then I'll start all over, get very frustrated. Okay, so starting a composition is difficult for me. Now, what I think is the most difficult thing about writing a compo, the most difficult thing for me is not writing too long of a story. So I get a bit carried away when I used to write in primary school. My compos used to be very long, crazily long, unadvisably long. Okay, so I would be writing like pages and pages, sometimes 7 or 8 pages worth of compo. Okay, so not recommended. I really do recommend that you guys stick to a average word count of somewhere between 500 to 1,200 words. Okay, it seems like a very big range, yes. Most kids write an average of 700 to 800. This is the average count. Okay, so give or take 200 words plus minus 200 words. Generally, you should be hitting minimum 500. You should be hitting around that much. Okay, and don't write too much. Don't write more than 1,200 words. Okay, which is actually quite long. You don't have to write that much. Okay, some kids are faster writers, some kids are slower writers, so it really depends. Okay, let's look at some of your answers. Nadira says she doesn't like it when she has to find the right words to use. I agree, that's tough. Okay, number 2, she thinks it's the grammar used in grammar. I agree. Okay, in compo, grammar becomes a big problem for many students because you are writing your own sentences and therefore there are more mistakes. Audrey, you don't have so many ideas. You don't have enough ideas to make up an interesting story. Okay, part of it is practice. Keep writing. You don't have to think about things that are wildly interesting. Okay, it doesn't have to be like some super action movie kind of. It doesn't have to be that. Okay, so it doesn't have to be super interesting. Now, if you look at the rubrics that we looked at last week, does it say that your story has to be interesting? It actually doesn't. Okay, so even if you can't find the right storyline, or if it's not as interesting as you hoped it would be, guys, that is the last thing to worry about. The first thing you need to worry about is your grammar, punctuation, spelling. The second thing is that your story must be logical, it must flow, it must be realistic. Interesting is the least of your worries. Okay, so I do find that a lot of students put too much focus on trying to get it to be really interesting, storyline wise. Like you want it to be super dramatic or super like a big twist at the end. You don't have to have really big twists. Okay, it can be a very standard, very basic storyline. That's fine. It really depends on how you write. Okay. Yes, resolutions also took me a while, mostly because I used to write very complicated stories. So trying to solve that problem was tough. All right. So definitely that is difficult. Yes, I agree. All right, guys, thank you for your feedback. I think that basically, how many of you think that compo is the hardest part of the exam to score for? Okay. All right. So some people do think it's very difficult. Now, I would tend to agree with you that it is not as easy as the others to score for, but we also need to change our mentalities and be positive. That's a real big first step. Okay, so our first step is don't be scared of compo. Don't expect to write a really interesting story. It doesn't have to be. It can be very simple and basic. It is how you write that is important. Okay, which is why I always tell a lot of my students that Creative is not about creative writing. A lot of us like to go for creative writing enrichment classes. I think I might have mentioned this last week, that a lot of kids go for enrichment classes, creative writing classes, which is good for you, but it's not what you were expected to do at your PSLE compo level. You're not supposed to write something that's super creative and interesting. Not that you're not supposed to, you don't have to. All right, so don't feel too stressed about that part. Okay, it doesn't have to be a very big twist or whatever. You don't need it. Okay, so a lot of you talk about the various different difficult things. So today we're going to talk about how to get started. And how to get started is how to write our first paragraph. Okay, so why is it so difficult to get started? I think if any of you have ever faced a really huge task, like cleaning your room, any of you live in very messy rooms? No, all of you are super neat, clean freaks. Goodness, I'm a bit messy. I just moved house. I am right now surrounded by cardboard boxes. When the boxes came, when the mover moved the stuff over, and I was just sitting in my new house with piles and piles of stuff all around me, guys, I did not know where to start, right? It just seemed like this huge task in front of me. But you know, you open one box and you put that box away, and then you open the second box, and you just got to keep going. Okay, so in the same way, whatever it is, whether it's a huge project or a composition, you really just have to take that first step, put one foot in front of the other, and keep going, and then you will find that your compo is done. I know it sounds very simple, but Yonghao, so do I. It does take me a long time to start, but once I start getting going, once I can once I figured out what I want to say and I hit upon the intro that I wanted, it usually goes faster after that. Okay, so it's same, right? Yeah. Okay, so last week we talked about these, very cliched beginnings that we want to try and avoid as much as possible. Okay, just want to clarify what I said last week. I think some kids were like, it means you cannot use it at all. Okay, let me clarify, okay? If you find you yourself are really struggling with English, like you are struggling to pass compo, then by all means, guys, you can go ahead and use these standard beginnings, because we take, like I said just now, one step at a time. We master the easier ones first, and then we move on to something more difficult. Okay, most of you, on the average, most of you who are not struggling, you can do something a little bit better. Okay, so it really depends on your level. We try and improve. So yesterday, somebody asked me, teacher, what is the best mark that we should get for compo? What's the ideal mark? I cannot tell you what an ideal mark is, because everybody is different. One of you may be used to scoring 39 upon 40 for compo. Some of you may be used to scoring 25, 26 for compo. Some of you may be at a failing stage where you're really not doing well, you need help. So if I tell all of you must score 38, 39, that's not very fair, right? It's very difficult. But what I can tell you is that after all these lessons, guys, we try and raise whatever mark you are getting, at the very least, 3 to 5 marks. Unless you're already at 39, then you don't need much help. Okay, but we try to raise it, okay, 3 to 5 marks. Okay, all right, so let's look at some good ways to start. Now, we really want to make sure that we give the marker a good impression, guys. If you stand in front of your school, any of you here prefects? Maybe do you guys, or any of you do morning assembly, have stood in front of your entire school, look down, some of you look down from the stage or look down from the podium and you see the entire school staring at you doing flag raising. So when you see a giant sea of faces, everybody looks the same. They're all wearing the same uniform. They all have black hair. They all look the same. Okay? So if one of your friends, and only one of your friends, was wearing a red t-shirt, standing out in the crowd, immediately your eye will see this person. Ooh, they're wearing a red shirt in a sea of white and blue, or in a sea of blue and gray, or in a sea of whatever color your uniform is. Okay, so we want to be like that student who stands out. We want to show the marker, hey, look, I write things differently from everyone else. I'm going to give you a good impression. I'm going to make you want to read my story. Okay? All right, so you guys, if you watch TV or you watch movies, you watch 5 minutes at the beginning and you find this is so boring, turn it off, beep. You guys watch Netflix, Disney Plus? Yes, no? YouTube videos? So sometimes if you watch a YouTube video and the first like 30 seconds is super boring, next, next, same thing. We want to make sure that we hook the reader's attention and say, hey, you should read more. You need to find out what's going on in this story. Okay? All right, so what are some good ways to start our compo? Today we are going to look at 5 kinds. Let's label them 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so these are all techniques that you can try and recall, techniques that you can remember, so that if you get stuck, this is a way you can start your compo. Okay, let's go with the first one, setting the scene. Okay, so what is setting the scene? Now, setting the scene, we start off with the easiest way to start an essay. What does setting the scene means? It's very easy. It just means that you tell people what's going on right now. Okay, so that, for example, if I were to show you a picture, this is a picture, for example, of kids playing at the playground. The minute you look at the picture, you know, yes, this is the scene of kids playing at the playground. I understand this context, right? Children play at the playground. Children who play at the playground are usually quite happy. What else do we know? Children who play at the playground, usually younger kids, maybe like, you know, lower primary or primary school, etc., etc. Okay, so we understand things from the context of the story. Now, what is good about setting the scene? It works for basically everything. Okay, it's simple to write. It works for everything. Some negative points are a lot of students end up writing this very huge, very detailed introduction, and you waste a lot of time. Okay, let's look at an example. Okay, it was a very cold morning as it had been raining very heavily since the previous night. I'm sure we're all used to this by now. As my mother was not feeling her best, my aunt who lived nearby volunteered to drive me to school. We got into the car hurriedly as I was already running late for school. Due to the bad weather, the road was already congested with traffic. It seemed that everyone else was late as well. Guys, all the examples I'm going to show you today are written by actual students. Okay, I took them out from the essay and I edited some of the grammatical and spelling mistakes, so you don't have to concentrate on the errors. We look at how it is written. So what's good about this? We learn a lot of things in just these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. What do we learn? It was cold. It had been raining for a long time. My mother, the narrator's mother, was not feeling well, and so someone who doesn't usually drive him to school has decided to help him out. Okay, so maybe she's not familiar with the route, or maybe not familiar with, maybe she's driving the mother's car, I'm not sure here. Okay, what else do we know? They were running late for school. What else do we know? There was heavy traffic because everybody else was late for wherever they were going, school, work, etc. So in 5 sentences in this paragraph, we learn at least 6 things about this story. We have a picture painted in our heads of what's going on here. Okay, in the chat box, can you tell me, what do you think is going to happen in this story? What is the problem that they're going to face? Or what is the big thing that you think might happen in this story? What do you think might happen? A car crash. I like that. I like a car crash. I don't like car crashes, but yes, that's a very good point. Audrey, raining too heavily, and so what happened? Accidents. Very good. What else? So it could be an accident that happens to them, or it could be an accident that happened to someone else, and maybe they had to stop and help. Okay, excuse me. All right, so a tree has fallen. Very good. A tree has fallen on the road to block the way to school. Okay, very good. So these are all very plausible ideas. These are all great story ideas. So just by looking at this introduction, already we can imagine what is going to happen. You're like, uh-oh, so many bad things here. I can sense something awful is going to take place, right? Because so many things could go wrong. The road was slippery. Maybe a car swerved, okay, and hit someone else. And because it was so jammed, the traffic was so bad, there was a huge pileup of like 40 cars all hit each other. Not a serious accident, but enough to create a gigantic traffic jam, even worse than what it was before. Okay, nobody could move at all. The ambulances couldn't get through. People were bleeding on the road. Okay, that's too dramatic. Just a word of caution, we try to avoid anything that is too gory. Please do not spend 3 paragraphs describing the pools of blood that are flowing down the road. Okay, some kids are really into very gory scenes. We try to avoid those, not because you cannot, but just because we don't want to make the reader so uncomfortable that they cannot enjoy your story. Okay, so we have a problem. It doesn't have to be so huge that someone is like, dying on the road. Okay, a minor crash. All right, that's fine. Car breakdown. Okay, so very good. So car breakdown leads into what? It could be, for example, maybe the car broke down and he couldn't make it to school for his examination or his school project presentation, whatever it is. Yong Hao, you can. It's just that we don't want, again, like I said, we just don't want to, we don't know who's reading our story. It doesn't have to be super, don't be so sad, okay, so gory. It can be someone injured, you have to rush them to hospital, they had a broken leg, a seriously broken leg, but don't be, like guts spilling out, throat slashed. No, guys, please don't. Okay, not so. As I would be very disturbed as a reader. Okay, all right. So we try not to be too gory. All right. So we predicted this story. Let's look at the different one. Let's look at flashbacks. Now, flashbacks are very popular. A lot of people like to write flashbacks. Why? Because it is interesting and it is not that difficult to do. So what exactly is a flashback? A flashback is basically when you start your compo with a memory. You want to kind of indicate to the reader that you're looking at something or you're thinking about something and you recall a thing that happened in the past. Okay, now this is again a very easy technique to apply to any kind of story. Happy story, sad story, angry story, anything. Now the only con is that, yes, so this is a problem with that some people are not quite sure how to manage this back and forth. One thing is that your starting has to be in past perfect tense, and then you switch to past tense, and then maybe you switch back again. It can get complicated. Okay, so if you want to use flashback, you must practice your tenses. Okay, you definitely can, Yong Hao. I will get to that. This is something I will talk about later on. Very good. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's look at an example. It was when I was clearing my room one afternoon that I found the old photograph. It had been tucked into a book that I had carelessly tossed into a corner. Before I had even seen the photograph, I knew instantly what it was. A picture of my family on the last holiday we had taken together. My lips curved into a gentle smile as I recalled the events of that vacation. On the last holiday just means that the most recent holiday. Right, the last holiday, the most recent holiday. Yeah. Okay, now my question is this story about something a positive memory or a negative memory? A happy memory or a sad memory? Ethan says happy. Yong Hao says positive. Who else? Anyone? Any other different answers? Happy? Positive? Okay, why do you think it is positive, guys? What is your clue here? What tells you that this is a happy memory? Very good, Ethan. Okay, so it says here, my lips curved into a gentle smile. Okay, so this tells you that obviously it is a positive thing. When you remember something and you smile, it must be a good memory, right? Now, let's do this. If I were to take this out, let's rewrite this half of the sentence. If I changed it to, tears began to fall as I recall, blah, 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 blah. Now is it happy or sad? Now it's sad. So you can see that with this one paragraph, you can very easily apply it to any sort of story. If I were to write, I clenched my fist in rage as I recalled. Now we know something terrible must have happened, something really rage-inducing, something angry. Okay, so very simple. All you have to do is change two things. You can change the reason, what was the picture of. It could be, for example, a picture of myself with my family pet, with my childhood pet. Or it could be a picture of me with my best friend from primary one. Or it could be a picture of my father when he was a baby. It could be anything. And by using this photograph as your kind of like your reason for remembering something, and then changing the emotion, you can apply it to any sort of story. It doesn't even have to be a photograph, right? It could be, it was when I was clearing my room one afternoon that I found the necklace that my grandmother had given me. It could be, it was when I was clearing my room one afternoon that I found the old book that my father had bought me on my first day of school. It could be anything. Okay, so this is a really easy paragraph to learn. Now, guys, you can use the same starting for every single essay you ever write. It doesn't matter. It's not like your teacher is going to collect 1 year's worth of compos and then say, I'm not going to allow you to do this starting anymore. I mean, they can for your own good. Maybe they want you to try different startings. But when you go for your PSLE, guys, your PSLE markers are only going to see one composition from your entire life. They have no idea who you are. They have no idea what gender you are. They don't know what school you're from. All they know is an index number. So will it matter that you've used the same starting 20, 30 times? It doesn't. Who cares? So practice something. If you find that you are stuck for a starting, you're always stuck, Yong Hao, right? 10 minutes, don't know how to start. Now, this is something you can fall back on all the time. Okay, just change the item, just change the feeling. That's it. Okay, so everything else you can kind of just use over and over again. Okay? All right, let's try something else. All right, so the third type of starting is something called introspection or reflection. Now, what is introspection? Introspection means you reflect or you think about something that has happened, okay, where you consider, oh, I'm really hungry today. I'm so starving. I'm starving. I didn't eat anything since 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's all your thoughts and feelings, okay? So when we talk about thoughts and feelings, it means that we focus only on what this character is thinking and feeling at this point of time. Okay, now this is a very good way to get your reader interested in your character. Okay, so for example, what story can I use that is a good example? Let's say it's a story written from the perspective of Cinderella. Okay, no, perspective of one of the pigs in the Three Little Pigs. It's about this pig who sat down and said, I knew I should never have spoken to that man selling sticks by the roadside. I really regret that decision. Now that I look back on it, I should never have spoken to him. It was all because I stopped to talk to the man selling sticks that I no longer have a house to live in. Okay, so that's a way to think about the character's thoughts and feelings. So start with that, and then your reader will be like, oh, what happened? What is this guy selling sticks? What is this thing that went on? All right, now this usually works better with sad stories, like something sad happened, or when the person has some sort of problem that they are thinking about, like, maybe they are very upset over a quarrel that they had with their best friend. Maybe it is sadness because they are moving to another country and they're leaving all their friends behind. Okay, so usually works better with something sad that is going on. Okay, now this also requires you to have good vocab. Again, doesn't mean that you just think to yourself, oh, my vocab is not very good, therefore I'm not going to try. No, it's all about practicing. All right, so let's look at this example. I blinked back my tears as I stared woodenly at my father's watch. It lay in pieces on my table. I felt as if there were a large cold stone in my belly. Guilt washed over me in waves. How would I ever be able to face my father and confess what I had done? Okay, predict for me. What do you think the narrator has done? Why is it so upsetting? He broke it, yeah. So he probably broke this watch. Now, what's the big deal? Okay, you broke the watch. Just tell your dad. Your dad would just say, oh, guys, you broke the watch. Well, that's okay. I'll just get another one. So maybe it's very expensive. Maybe it's his favorite watch. Very good. What else? What other possibilities? Someone yesterday said, an antique. So maybe it is an antique. Maybe it's a family heirloom. Heirloom means passed down from like the great-grandfather, passed it to his daughter, who passed it to her son, then now down to the narrator. And what does the narrator do? Accidentally smashed it. Yeah, okay, so maybe broke the antique watch. Yeah, oof, that's right. Okay, someone else suggested that maybe it was a very expensive watch, like Audrey mentioned, that he was never supposed to touch. So maybe his father said, yes, you can wear any of my watches except this one. It's very expensive. Don't touch it. It belonged to your grandfather. I'll hand it to you when the time is right, but not now. And then the narrator, itchy hands, as our parents tell us, very itchy fingers, right? That you went to pick it up just because you were so curious. What is it about this watch that is so interesting? Ah! And then it drops on the table and smashed into pieces. Okay, so very good, very good. All your predictions are spot on. Okay, that this narrator has broken his father's watch, maybe very expensive, maybe very precious. Now, butterfingers, yes. Now, I want you to notice something. I'm going to circle a bunch of things, okay? How does he feel here? I blinked back my tears. When you're crying, you feel sad. Okay, very good. I stared woodenly at my father's watch. He was feeling like he didn't know what to do, feeling lost. Not woodenly means you're standing there like a block of wood, just like a piece of wood, right? So you're feeling lost. You don't know what to do. I felt as if there were a large cold stone in my belly. How does this feel? Have you ever felt this way? Scared, yeah. So fear, scared. Definitely weighed down. Yes, feeling weighed down. Okay, guilty is here. Very good. So he's feeling guilty. Okay, and then the last bit, what else is he feeling? He's like saying, how will I ever be able to face my father? He's feeling very anxious. So just in one paragraph, almost every single line tells you a different feeling. Sadness, feeling lost, feeling fear, feeling weighed down, feeling guilty, feeling anxious, and all these things are exactly how anyone would feel when they have done something wrong and have to admit to their parents what they have done. Right? I'm sure you've all felt that feeling. When I was young, I would feel this like burning in my chest. I have to go back and tell my mother what is it that I did wrong. Sometimes when we misbehave, like if we didn't hand up homework or whatever it is, the teacher will always tell you, my class, the teacher will tell our class, our form teacher, I want you to go home and tell your parents what you have done. And I will call your parents at 8 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, I will call your parents. You better have talked to them first, tell them what happened, so that I do not have to be the one to tell your parents what happened. All of us are very scared because we have to go home and confess to our parents and then tell the parents, my teacher's going to call you at 8 o'clock. Tough, right? Okay, so exactly all these things: pressured, guilty, weighed down, scared, etc., etc. Okay, so this is a very, very good example of introspection and reflection. All right, action. Now, action is fun. Action is something that those of you who like to watch action movies, any of you watched Fast and the Furious? Very good. Anyone else watched Mission Impossible? Okay, these are very old movies, I know. Fast and Furious, Mission Impossible, any sort of action movie at all. Now, action movies like to start off with something really exciting. The James Bond movies, for example, 007, okay, maybe it's all the Impossible movies, really all of them, even like the super old ones. Wow. I think the first Mission Impossible movie came out when I was in secondary school. That's how long ago it was. Okay, I think so. I can't remember. Very long ago. So, yeah, so action, right? Action movies like Fast and the Furious always starts off with some sort of car chase, some sort of really dramatic, exciting thing, where that gets the reader really excited. Like, wow, this whole movie is going to be full of action. Any movie which The Rock stars in, right? The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, the really big guy, full of muscles. Okay, so the good thing about action movies, it's a great way to immediately go into the action, the main problem. You start off straight away, which means you don't have to waste so much time building up your story. You start straight away in the action. But of course, this works much better with stories that are about some sort of physical conflict, sports, or some sort of fight, some sort of really dramatic, exciting thing that is happening. Okay, now remember, not too dramatic. We don't want to kill someone off, but enough to, like bloody someone's nose or give him a black eye or whatever it is. So let's look at a good example. Very good, yes, a school bully. So if you started out, it's a good example. If you started out describing how he rammed me into the school locker, I flinched as my head hit the cold metal. Okay, things like that. So that's really action straight away. Okay? Very, very, it's very, very interesting. All right, so "Stop, thief," I bellowed. Leaping to my feet, I pelted after the culprit who had just pulled my bag off his shoulder. I was outraged at his audacity. Did he really think he could get away from me, a national sprinter? Gathering all of my energy, I launched myself at my nemesis and tackled him to the ground. Audrey, exactly, stealing. And then I'm going to show you the second paragraph of this student's writing. That was how I met the boy who would become my best friend. So you guys just now were talking about twists, things that are interesting. It doesn't have to be a huge twist. It can be something as small and simple as this, where you start off talking about this boy who has stolen a bag, and yet this was how he became his best friend. So for me, the reader, I would be like, wow, what is going on here? How did this thief end up being this person's best friend? What's going on? Okay, so that's very interesting. Audacity means daring. Okay, when, for example, you have done something that is really shocking, something that is like you're full of daring. Like, for example, Yong Hao, if you went up to your principal and your friend says, "Hey, I dare you to go up and kick me on his back." Post-it note that says "kick me." Okay, or me, if someone dared me to go to the principal and paste the note on his back that says "kick me," and you get caught, that's audacity. How dare you? Okay, it's not a good thing. Okay, it's a bad thing. Sometimes we use the word audacious. It basically means very daring. Okay, so audacious is your adjective. Nemesis is enemy. Yeah, like your biggest rival, your hugest enemy. I'm glad, Yohao. You are clearly a well-behaved child. Okay, enemy. Okay, so nemesis means an enemy. Is there a transformer called Nemesis Prime? Like Optimus Prime's nemesis is called Nemesis Prime. Really? I didn't even know that. And I used to watch Transformers growing up. Okay, yes, arch nemesis is very good. So an arch nemesis is like we always call them arch enemy. Okay, your arch enemy. Okay, it means basically that your most hated enemy. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to think about this now. What are all the vivid verbs used? Vivid verbs, okay, vivid verbs are exciting sounding action words. Okay, so a boring word, not boring, but a very standard word would be like walked. That's a very simple word. A vivid verb would be like skipped or hopped or sauntered or strolled. These are all much more interesting ways of saying walked. Okay, so what words do we see in this passage that are interesting action words? Okay, leaping, very good. Let's leaping. What else? What other action words? Basically, almost all the action words here. Audacity is a noun. Tackle, yes, tackle. Leaping to my feet, yes. Pulled is a verb. Not very interesting, but okay. Outraged is an adjective. Launched, yes. What else? Bellowed, very good. What else? I what after the culprit? Pelted. What does pelted mean? To run really, really, really fast. Okay. What else? I think gathering is not a very exciting phrase, but okay. So we look at all these words. Outraged. Outraged is an adjective here. Okay, so if we talk about vivid verbs, look at how many are used. Okay, they're really interesting. Not just words, but the whole phrase. So for example, leaping to my feet, gathering all of my energy, launched myself, tackled him to the ground. So these are really, really interesting. They tell you exactly what is happening. You can picture this exciting action going on. So let's say pulled. If you wanted to improve on the word pulled and make it a little bit more difficult, what is a word you can use? A vivid verb that you can use that means the same as pulled. Who had dragged my bag. The dragg's a little bit slower, but okay, dragged my bag off my shoulder. That's possible. What else? Snatched my bag off my shoulder. Very good. Starts with a Y. Anyone knows a word that starts with Y? Yanked. Very good. Okay. So drag, snatched, yanked. Fantastic. Good. So look at all these words, guys. Are they very difficult? Are they very hard? Tackled, launched, gathering, pulled, leaping, bellowed. They're all simple words, but because we use so many of them, right, that all of them are just pushed up a little bit. You don't have to use some really long, ridiculous word like vociferated, which is just ridiculous. Okay, so because all of them are just then you must use those that you can spell. Like leaping, you can spell leaping, right? So instead of smile, for example, right? We talked about words like smile. Instead of saying smiled, say grinned, say beamed, okay, smirked. Instead of saying, uh, instead of just saying said, what else can you say? Whispered, moaned, yelled, shrieked, etc., etc. So basically, you don't have to, again, we're not asking you to use words you cannot spell. Okay, there are loads of words that are just a little bit more interesting and that you can use. So if you didn't want to use bellowed, let's say you cannot remember how to use bellowed, okay, you can say shrieked, you can say shouted, you can say um, screamed at the top of my lungs even, right? So it's not just about one word, it's about improving as a whole. Okay, I'm running out of time. Okay, 5 senses, let's go quickly. All right, so 5 senses, how do you start with using 5 senses? You use a descriptive segment. So you kind of explain and describe in detail one thing. So it's very similar to setting the scene, but instead you are just thinking about one thing. So just now in setting the scene, we talked about the rain, we talked about being late, we talked about the weather, we talked about the mother being sick. So there are many different things. For 5 senses, you focus on one thing. Okay, like the messiness of the house. You focus on the person's face. All right, so just one thing. So again, very good, because why? If you can describe things effectively, this tells that you can use very good vocabulary, but you need to have a good vocabulary. Okay, so it is more challenging if you are the kind of person who takes a long time to think of words, think of ways to say things. For example, the vivid verbs, if you get stuck, then maybe 5 sentences is not the best way for you to start your essay. Pick something else like flashback. Okay? All right, let's look at an example. I had never seen anyone as horrifying as her in my life. She towered over me threateningly, casting a shadow over my terrified face. There was a bumpy scar on her cheek that twisted her mouth into a permanent scowl. She bared her yellowed, jagged teeth at me, and I flinched from the stench of stale cigar smoke from her lungs. All I could think about was how to escape from her clutches. Who do you think this person is? Who might this person be? Someone who smokes cigars, who has a scar, yellow teeth. Who's this person? A kidnapper. Okay, very good. Who else? A bully. Okay, a bully who smokes cigars. Probably an adult. An adult, right? Someone towered, so very tall. A gangster. Okay, maybe. A thief. Okay. What else? A really scary neighbor. All right, so a good way to end this essay, or maybe a good way to, when we use this essay, a good twist could be that the first time I met this person, she seemed so horrifying and so scary, but this person came and saved me, or this person came and helped me when I really needed help. Maybe you were at the shop and you had no money, and this lady just stomped in, threw some money on the counter, and said, here you go, and then walked off again. And you're like, oh, she has a heart of gold. Under all those scars and meanness, she's actually someone who's really lovely. And then you made friends with her and you realize that, it's just her. Okay, so that's a possible twist that you could put in. Something that's not too difficult again, right? Quite a simple twist, okay? All right, so yes, it's a lot to think about, I know. But guys, you don't have to learn all 5. You don't have to master all 5. I'm showing you 5 ways so you can kind of decide which one are you more inclined to using. Which one do you like more? Which one is easier for you to do? And then you can kind of decide this is a good way to start off all my essays. Okay, or some of your essays, up to you. Also, like I think Yoha asked just now, can you combine these? Yes, you can. So let's look at this paragraph, okay? The school bell rings with a delighted screech, bursting through the subdued silence of the school. The mood among my classmates instantly brightens as a chorus of happy voices. I'm not going to read everything because I'm short of time. You can read it faster yourself. Tell me, what are the elements used in this paragraph? A, B, C, D, and E. Just type it in. A, okay, definitely setting the scene, because why? They're telling you it was in a school bell. When the school bell is in the school, it's at the end of school. People are happy, the teacher's happy, you go up class, and the students run outside. So a lot of things going on, definitely setting the scene. Okay, D is action. Why action? Look at the words that are used: rings, screech, bursting, brightens, gathers, strikes swiftly. We explode out of our seats. That's a really good one. So definitely, yes, some action. And the last one, five senses. Yes, love that. Look, we have sounds here. We have the smiles on their faces, happy voices. Okay, we have the action that they are running out, people who are running. All these, okay, is a really, really well written introduction. Okay, so you see you can combine some. All right, let's try some questions. Look at this short paragraph here. I want you to tell me, what is the technique used here? This time we are only going to focus on one, so pick one. Okay, so this one is quite simple. Okay, so as you think about it, let me just underline some things as you go. Okay, do you remember this? Memories came flooding back to me. Remember, it all began a few years before, dot, dot, dot. Okay, so what technique is this? Out of the five, A, B, C, D, and E, which is the most likely answer? The best possible answer. Is it A, setting the scene? Remember, if it is setting the scene, you would learn a lot of details about different things that are going on. Is it a flashback, which means that you are going back in time to remember something that happened? Is it introspection? It's all about the character's thoughts and feelings. Is it action, where you have people jumping around, doing all sorts of, physical things? Is it five senses, where you're concentrating on one particular description of a setting or a character? Okay, very good. The answer here is definitely a flashback. Okay, so by looking at this item, this trophy, okay, the narrator looks at this item and thinks, oh, wow, I remember when I got this trophy. This was this thing that happened, and I managed to get it, this beautiful silver cup. Okay, so it must have been a very long time ago, because remember this, long time ago. Battered, that means it is like bent and dented, it's kind of been through a lot. The carving is faded. Okay, I remember again a few years before. All right, so we know it has been some time ago, right? All right, next one. I'm not going to read, I'm just going to let you guys answer. Okay, so again, think about the different options, which is the best possible option. All right, so this one's quite straightforward. Here we have, I think most of you got the correct answer. It is definitely yes, A, setting the scene. So we learn a lot of things about what's happening here. We know where it is. We know, because it's all where it is, right? Where it is. We know who lives there. We know why they live there. We know something about how they pass their time. He goes into town to buy supplies. Jen just spends free time sewing. Their life is idyllic. So it kind of paints this picture of what is happening in this story, right? You can imagine, quiet log cabin, mountains, forest, two people staying here, husband and wife. They don't do much all day long. They just do very simple things. Okay, so this is setting the scene. Yes, Audrey?
What's idyllic?
Idyllic means like it's a very peaceful, and you don't do anything much. You just kind of relax and enjoy yourself. Okay, if I were to say, for example, it's so idyllic, I'm just gonna lie here and drink a hot chocolate with marshmallows in it, with a fireplace. Or it could be, this is so idyllic, I'm lying on a beach drinking, coconut water from a actual coconut, and in my swimsuit, enjoying the sun. All these things are idyllic. It basically means that you are feeling very zen, very peaceful. The world is quiet, and you are just feeling really relaxed and happy. Okay, that's what idyllic means. So we know something is happening here. We don't know what's going to be the problem in this story, but something happens. All right, let's try another one now. Okay, let's try this one. The ball sailed towards me. I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's very long. What is the best possible answer here? Okay, let's look at the answer. Yes, okay, so most of you have got it. It is definitely action. Okay, why is it action? Because you can see so many vivid verbs. It's about this sports event. We don't know, playing some sort of ball game. It could be squad. What we use for squad? Volleyball squad, basketball maybe. Okay, so definitely some sort of ball game that they are playing. where, you know, he, this narrator imagined himself to be an attacking lion and how, thinking about how awesome he would look, and in the end, had the ball smashed straight into his mouth. This actually happened to me, you know. I had a softball smash me in the mouth. Now, this student wrote this story, and the story was actually about, I think that he was his best friend. His best friend was the one. Okay, no. The ball hit him in the mouth, and then his best friend started laughing. I thought it was super hilarious. But there he was, crouching on the floor, bleeding and feeling really angry and upset and humiliated and embarrassed. And then saw his best friend laughing at him, although his best friend genuinely just, you know, thought it was funny, not to be mean. But then there was a big fight, and they were very angry, and they had a quarrel. And then at the end, of course, how they made up and became friends again. So that was this story. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this one. This is a bit tricky. Okay, so what do you think this could be? We have different things that are described here. How are they described? We have things that you can see, things that you can taste, things that you can smell, things that you can touch, things that you can hear. It's a big clue. And of course, how he feels, because actually there are 6 senses, don't you think so? The 6th sense is your emotions. Okay, so you've got, oops. I'm going to close the answer in just a while. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, yes, so it is 5 senses. Okay, I give that away. All right, so here we have a really, really detailed description about the condition of this beach. It is clearly in a terrible state, and this student wrote all about the different things. Now, not all of the time are we able to talk about the sense of taste, right? If, let's say, you were in a really crowded train, why would you talk about taste? You don't really talk about the sense of taste, right? But mostly, we should use definitely things that you can see, things that you can hear, things that you can smell. Sorry, it's a terrible nose. Things that you can touch. Okay, so the 4 senses are usually what we talk about, as well as the invisible sense, which is your feelings, how you feel about something. That can also be included in your 5 senses. Okay, so it's that kind of invisible 6th sense. Okay, all right, I think that we have one more, last one. Okay, Sabrina's, now we only have one option left, right? So you should know what answer this is. Sabrina's heart was hammering in fear. She could not believe what she had agreed to do. She stared at the trembling hands. She tried to remember what she had been told to say. She flinched, thinking about the punishment. A drop of sweat rolled down her temple. She tried to stop her hands from shaking. Her stomach churned. She was struggling with this terrible dilemma. So what is it here? A, B, C, D, or E? Okay, so we have this definitely an introspective, reflective piece where the writer is focusing very much on how Sabrina feels. She is afraid. She is disbelieving. She is anxious. She is, again, afraid. She is nervous. Excuse me. She is, again, nervous, right? Anxious. Okay, so panicking, indecisive, all these things. So many feelings and emotions, only focusing on that one thing, feelings and emotions, in the starting paragraph. And for me, and you can see very clearly here that what has this student done? This sentence is put in to make the reader interested. What did she agree to do? I really want to know now. I want to find out more. I want to read more. So you can see it's not so much about this super dramatic twist or super interesting storyline. It's more about how do we keep our reader interested? Okay, how do we at the beginning don't reveal too much so that later on it becomes something a little bit more interesting? So it's not, it doesn't have to be a huge twist. Oh, it was her brother. Oh, no, it doesn't have to be. Okay. All right. Good job, guys. Any questions at all?